Well, we'll pray for you.
It's just been crazy. A lot of work, and I really didn't even get a chance to read that reading assignment
Yep.
that we had last week. I didn't even open it. In addition, I've had a training session that I've been doing on for some students, amputee rehabilitation, and that's been taking a lot of my time. I just finished that yesterday, so I'm a bit dazed by it all. So hopefully tomorrow I'll be taking off, and then the first 3 days are going to be pretty hectic. It's going to be very long days, but then after that it calms down a bit. But I'll be in Nairobi for the next 11 weeks.
Oh, you're gonna be in Nairobi.
Yeah, yeah. You ever been there?
No, I haven't. But I'm good friends with the Kenyan ambassador,
All right.
and
And that's a wonderful
and
place.
yeah, and he keeps on saying that gotta come, gotta come. So yeah, I'm looking to go probably one of our long weekends because now we have these long weekends. Yeah, so cool. Um, so you got a big project in Kenya that you're on training or?
Yeah, yeah. I have some training to do. I have some uh, sort of like getting together with the regional team and try to work on some things. Um, it's also about the experience and about meeting people and things along that path, And we say in our language, always we have the saying that there's always one of the benefits. When you travel, you always grow a little.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I'm looking forward to some of that. Getting
Yeah.
getting that growth. And
Yeah, the traveling, especially when you're traveling you're traveling for purposes outside of tourism per se. When you're going to Cancun for the weekend, or for the week, it's a little or Maldives. It's a little bit different than when you're going to Nairobi for 11 weeks. It's
yeah.
a different type of thing. Or when you're going to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, a little bit different than.
But you still get something, you still get like that
No,
experience
you
of
get something.
meeting
No,
people and it
you
helps.
do get you get something, but it's different when you're going for. I found anyway, it's different. Like, um, I took my family to Italy. We traveled Italy, and because we was traveling really as like traditional tourists, I didn't get that same feeling as when I go to a place and um I'm not necessarily I'm a tourist, but I'm not I'm not acting like a tourist. I'm going there for maybe for business purposes or even if it's for tourism, but the purpose is not necessarily to see all the sites. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, this is a different. I found for myself is a totally different. When I'm in tourist mode, I I learn nothing but lose a lot of money because I guess I get wrapped up into the whole tourist thing. So, um, all right. So, how does that affect our classes?
Well, just until the 6th, and then I'll after that I have time. My actually the okay, I'll tell you how it affects it directly. The time there is just like the time where you're at. So where you're at, it's 5:30, right?
Mhm.
5:37. Okay, so we'll be in the same time zone.
Okay.
Which is good because then work finishes at like finish at 4:35. So it's all right. And so I'm still hooked up. I still have my everything with me. So I'll work on. I will try to work on it week by week. We'll set 2 days and work on it. If I can just find out what my week will look like, then it's easier. So I'll definitely get back to you within the first 2 days that I'm
All right,
there,
no worries.
and like just share a message and tell you, we can be at the same time. Just pick 2 days, for example.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so that's what, and hopefully, if we do this, so tomorrow's a travel day, 4, 5, 6 is function day, 7 is going to be a Friday, which for them is like the end of the week. So it's like a housekeeping, office keeping sort of day. And so we'll try to, I'm going to try to go for the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, to get some classes in there. Uh, but let me see, because I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
it's no pressure. No pressure, no pressure. All right, so let's take the time we have today and talk. I was thinking the best thing to do in is actually next on the list. Let's talk about lesson planning. Um, before we talk about lesson planning, I want to talk really quick, really very extremely quickly about um communicative activities. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we should talk about it. All right. All right. So again, I'm going to make this one this fast because I really want to get into the lesson planning. Um, communicative, communicative activities uh, are activities that we do. So there was a teacher paradigm, right? We have the warmer, we have the uh,
Modeling
you
and
know,
the contextualization.
yes,
Right.
yes.
The
So
the
we skip the teaching, reading, teaching, writing because that's a whole different program, right? Um, but at the end of that lesson, we try to end it with a communicative activity. Remember that um, we remember when we talked about control practice, we said what the teacher is right there controlling what was going on, orchestrating everything, right?
right.
What do you do for exercise, right? Students, teacher, 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 student, teacher, right? Controlling that whole deal. Well, at the end of the lesson, um, there should be some time for the students to demonstrate, to practice on their own and demonstrate what they learned on their own, right? So I like to call it freestyle, but it's freestyle in a manner that uh, the teacher has a activity to allow them to freestyle. All right. So here, going back to the what do you do for exercise, you know, um, you could do a number of things with this chart, right? So I could say, what do you do for exercise? And the person can say run. And what I like with this chart is you can do a number of different things. You can play like bingo with this. You can do so many things with this little chart. You can play tic-tac-toe with it. You can play bingo with it, right? So you give everybody a card, but they're different. This takes a little planning, but and then basically turn out. I mean, it's do it one time and laminate them. You have them forever, right?
Right.
And then somebody says run, and then everybody marks run, right? Until they get bingo or until they get tic-tac-toe, so that works on their listening skills, right? Freestyle, because it's not guided by the teacher. um you can also do a speaking activities with this where somebody, the students ask a question to each other or you ask the question, and then they're able to respond appropriately. So what do you do for exercise? I do yoga. All right. Uh, where do you do yoga? At school. Um, and they can run through a certain number of scenarios. Like you can have more too. So you can do where they do yoga, how often, when do you do yoga? So what do you do for exercise? I do yoga. Where do you do yoga? At the gym. How many times a week do you do? How often do you do yoga? 3 times a week. When do you do yoga? On Wednesdays and Fridays, right? So you can have all these different scenarios, and it basically confirms to you that they actually got something out of the lesson, right? And it's done in a fun way, so
I
the
can
students
definitely
can
see
have
it.
fun.
Yeah, looks fun. Yeah.
We have one run and read. Well, that's kind of a reading activity, but it serves as a communicative activity. That's really fun. And so you can make all these different fun things, to get students on their feet. You can see here, they can do walkabouts, role plays, tic-tac-toe. They can play hopscotch, snakes and ladders. They can do debates, you know, running is better than yoga. That's more of advanced, well, why is running better? And they can debate back and forth why their activity is better. You can do projects and tasks. Um, the only thing you have to worry about here is that you have enough time to complete the activity, right? So this is perfect for like a language center. If the students are going to be in a language center, it's 2 hours, right? You can definitely run through and do a good communicative activity. If you only have 50 minutes, it's probably going to be challenging to run through everything in 50 minutes because you really wanted it to be a part of the entire lesson plan. Again, in the ESL setting, the students probably have more than 30 minutes, right? Or 40 minutes, not like a college class. So they should have a longer period of time, right? So the communicative activity is really designed to ensure that the students have learned something from your lesson. Okay. And in the book, there's several communicative activities that you can follow up on. All right. Don't want to spend a lot of time with that. I do want to spend a lot of time with this basic lesson. Okay.
Sec. Good. Okay.
Right. Change screens here. All right, so we're gonna work from here. All right. Can you see that? Or is that
Yeah.
too small?
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I actually like this lesson plan, and I actually teach teachers to use this lesson plan even in their schools because I think it's a good one. There's no perfect lesson plan template, but I like this one. All right. And Dave actually came up with this one. This is a good one. I like it. So let's look at the structure here. And I'll put in the Google Classroom, I'll put this template for you. I think I already did, but if I didn't, I'll put the template for you. Let's look at this, because one of the things you're going to do in your portfolio is write out a plan. Okay. We'll wait till you get settled in before you and relax before we have you do this. But let's look at, you got the context. All right, Emma, what do you do for exercise? The context is what? Exercise. Pretty simple, right? Then you got your terminal objective. Okay. Now, what do you think we mean by terminal objective?
What are you trying to? What learning? What's the learning outcome after this lesson?
Right. That the students will be able to use
the language of exercise, or
right. Yeah. What will they be able to do? Use what will they be able to do long term with this? Remember, this is in context with the language learning, right? So what will they be able to do long term with this? Forever and ever and ever and ever, right? Because when we do ESL with students, everything that we do with them should be using the language in practical scenarios, right? So being able to, what do you do for exercise? I run. How often do you run? 3 times a week. Where do you run? Around the mall. What days of the week? When do you run, rather? On Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? I mean, these are things that these are questions that we ask, right? As a part of the English language. You know, when, what, where, why, the W's, right? So that's the terminal objective. The terminal objective is that outcome, as you said, that the students will be able to do continuously in practical situations and authentic real world situations. Let's look at it. Let's looking at it from a ESL perspective. Also, the terminal objective, we normally say the objectives must be what?
Smart.
So the terminal objective doesn't necessarily have to be smart. It could be something a lot more subjective, right? It might not be necessarily measurable, and it depends on what you're trying to teach. Because the terminal objective may be something that's just going to make them, better. Make sense? Better in some way.
Yeah. I mean, trying to make objectives smart in itself is often, people talk about it, but it's very hard actually to do on paper, especially when you're talking about qualitative aspects. And so if you can get like
yes
3 of those variables, a time frame, maybe, something in general, that would be great. So when you're with us, because it's a big objective, right? It's a terminal objective. It's not a specific lesson objective. Yeah.
It's a huge thing. And again, it may not be specific per se, or measurable, or achievable. It may not be achievable. Well, hopefully you're doing it because it is. Hopefully you're doing it because it is achievable.
Right.
But when I say achievable, meaning you may
the
not see
timeliness and the time frame may be an issue.
Right. Yeah, you might not see the whole piece.
Right.
Right. You're just hoping that it develops over time. Right. So you're tapping into it. Whereas the enabling objectives, they're going to be smart. Okay. They're going to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. All right. The enabling objectives. All right. So like for instance, greet each other, right? You can do that, right? We can make those smart. Ask and answer, what do you do for exercise? Those can be smart. That's a smart. Ask and answer question. Students use target language structures. Substitute new language into the core structures and student to student interactions. Fill in grids and blanks. All the enabling objectives are smart, but the terminal objective may or may not be smart. Make sense?
Mhm.
So the enabling objectives, how we get the students there, right? Those have to be smart. Okay. Okay. I like to say terminal objection is what, your vision for the students, you know, you know, that you may not, it's just going to be a little piece that you hope. Let's go back to, your medical students, right? You may have a terminal objective that it may not necessarily be smart and from a classroom perspective, and you can't really measure it from a classroom perspective, but what you're giving them will be added value for a specific situation, 11 years from now when they're in a, emergency room doing something.
Right.
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 So I think we're cool on that. All right. Enabling objectives must be smart because they're what we're actually going to do to help the students get to that terminal objective or move them towards that terminal objective. All right.
All right.
Now we talked about time, right? Remember I said in the community activity, you gotta make sure you have set enough time aside to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So time, we don't discount the time. Okay.
For sure.
All right. So it's a lot of lesson plans. You don't see teachers write how much time that's going to take, but it's actually really important. Is this activity that you're about to do, how much time is it going to take? Is it going to take up too much time and you can't get the other parts of the lesson? So I like that time piece because it makes the teacher mindful. But we're not going to start with time. We're actually going to start with what the students do. Now, remember the first day we talked about student-centered learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, putting students first, active learning, right? So when we write a lesson plan, we always start with what we want the student to do. What do we want them to do? What do we want them to do? And then we ask ourselves, what does the teacher need to do in order to get them to do it? That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we start with, this is the most important part of the lesson plan. Because it stops you from going, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and da 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 da, and I'm going to da 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 da. And then it's like, what is the poor students doing? What are they doing? You seem like you're doing everything. I was just in a meeting today with a group of teachers, and they're like, well, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. And I said, well, when are the students going to do anything? Seems like you're doing it all. When are they going to do anything? Right? Well, no, we just want them to listen. Okay, that's fine. Listening is fine. But when are they going to do something? They're kindergartens. They need to do something eventually. Because I'm gonna tell you, you're not going to get them to listen for so long, right? So start with what you want the students to do, and then ask yourself, what does the teacher need to do in order to get the students to do that? Okay. So in this example, the first one, we want the students to observe the teacher model. So what we're gonna do to do that? We're gonna start doing a teacher to teacher charade. What do you do for exercise? I run. What do you do for exercise? I run. What do you do for exercise? I run. And I tell you, every single time, regardless of the age group, I just did it last week with a bunch of Saudi students who have low level English, like A1 English, right? And I did the classic, what do you do for exercise? I run. And every last one of them was, I didn't say anything to them. I didn't say other than salam alaikum, right? And then I went right into my spill. After I put the dialogue on the board, I went right into my spill. What do you do for exercise? I run. What do you do for, and then all of them were like this, right? And then when it was time to do teacher student, I mean student teach teacher student, they were able to respond right away, right? So it actually does work 100%. Especially with students, they love hearing it 20 times before you ask them a question, right? They want to hear it as much and then try it out, right? So that's a great example of, we want the students to observe the teacher model. We do it by doing the teacher charade, all right? We want the teachers to respond to the teachers. We want the students to respond to the teacher's questions. So we ask, so the teacher asks, hi, my name is Ray. What is your name? My name is Muhammad. Pleased to meet you. Pleased to meet you. All right. That's the, so the first day of your, if you have A1s, that's a first great interaction with them. On the board, what do you do for, what do you do, Paxson? Hi, my name, you know, I'm probably, my last words are probably going to be, what do you do for exercise? Hi, my name is Ray. What is your name? Abdullah. Pleased to meet you. Pleased to meet you. That's a good first activity when you first meet a group of students. Hi, my name is Ray. What is your name? My name is Abdullah. Pleased to meet you. Pleased to meet you. It's easy for them. If you do the teacher 5 times and you go through that micro teaching, teacher, student, teacher, student, they love it. And you can, and that pattern, you do it you can do it the whole year, the whole 6 months, the whole week. They love it, right? Because they know what to expect. Okay. So we started what students do, which will guide what the teacher needs to do. Then I asked myself, how long is it going to take me to do that on average? It should take me about 5 minutes. All right. Yeah, it might take you 6 or 7, but it doesn't mean we have to stop right at 5 minutes. But it's just so you can plan out based on how much time you have. Then we go right back to the right again. And we ask ourselves, when I do this, what are going to be the obstacles? What's the problems I'm going to have? All right. Is are the students going to be noisy? That's not the student's problem. That's your problem, because you're the idiot that has to go up there and talk to yourself for 2 minutes. Right. So what problems are you going to have? Again, these are not student problems. These are your problems, right? If the students are going to be noisy, what are you going to do to correct that? Right. If the classroom is going to be a challenge because there's not enough space, what are you going to do to correct that? So this allows us, asking the problems allow us to consider our personal challenges. Like Dave always talks about, he forgets to smile, right?
Right.
Put the class at ease, he forgets to smile. So Dave, smile, right? You know, like for instance, when I did it last week, I remembered that the whiteboard, the wheels, it was a rolling whiteboard, but
Right.
somebody took the wheels off.
Okay.
So it has like there's like two wheels and it's full legs, right? So how am I going to move this board without awkwardly, what do I need to do? Am I going to just teach where the board is currently, or am I going to take the time to move the board and there'd be logistical issues and the daggone thing fall apart? So I decided just to teach right there where the board was. I had enough space, and go from there. But thinking about these things will help you move smoothly because you already know these are the challenges. I know the computer is slow, right? I know this daggone computer is slow. So what am I gonna do instead of getting there going, oh, that's right, this computer is slow. So these thinking about problems allow you to make those adjustments. Because again, what's the title of the book that we're using? Smooth Moves. When we get into teaching and learning mode, we want everything to move as smoothly as possibly can, right? We want everything to be nice, smooth transitions and not be interrupted by logistical things or people interrupting us or technology, you know. So that's the lesson plan. Now you can see how the paradigm comes in. You got your greeting. For me, that first day, this might be your whole lesson right here. Hi, my name is, right? And then remember we said scratch that. The greeting is the greeting. Okay. And we move right into the warmer.
Right.
All right. Hi, what do you do for exercise? All right. Then we go into the control practice. The control practice is all that entire dialogue. What do you do for exercise? How often? Where do you do exercise? Where do you do exercise? Right? Or where do you run? Right? Then we move into vocabulary expansion. Right. So now we give them more opportunities to build on vocabulary given the context. So what do you do for exercise? I do yoga. What do you do yoga? In the basement of the community center. How often? 5 times a week. How often? Where? How often? 5 times a week. When? On Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay, and they can switch the days up. But in that core dialogue is, when you do it, they have to stick to the script. This is key. In the control practice, they have to stick to the script that's on the board. They cannot change one word. Why? Because you're going to bring them back to that board and show them different grammar points or different or structures, right? So you don't want them moving away from the script. They can, all right.
Right.
Okay. Then now often here it says listening and then reading. A lot of times we don't have that much time to do a listening activity and then do a reading activity. A lot of times we just don't have that much time, right? But you made it, or it might just be a writing activity here because that built on something that you did the previous lesson, or a speaking activity. It all depends on how much time you have with the learners. If you have a lot of time, you might be able to do all 4. You might be able to do teaching, speaking, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It depends on how much time you have with your group.
How big is this group right now? I mean, when you put the timings and things like that, you take into consideration, of course, the size of the group that you're working with. So what are we looking at? How many students?
It depends on how old they are. It depends on their level. Because you can use this as you can use this very script, this very paradigm for even advanced students. It's just the activities will be more advanced,
Right.
right?
But how many of them?
So so if it's advanced for your advanced students, you can have a whole, you can have 20 students because they're advanced. If they're older, older and advanced and self-regulated, mature, you could do, I've had 50 students, teachers, and I did this, right? And it was smooth. Why? Because they're older, they're professionals, and I'm not gonna have less challenges, right? Now, if they're younger and low level, now the class drastically reduces. I would say for younger students, depending for younger students, you're going to have more time and less activities, right? Because it's going to be harder for them to focus.
Right.
All right. So depending on the so I would say, let's say you had second graders, A1. You probably don't want more than 4 or 5 students.
Mhm.
Right.
Makes sense.
That number goes up the older they get. Again, if you have adults who don't know English, you probably can do a room of 12, 15 adults, A1. Why? Because they're not going to be pulling each other's hair. Right? They're not going to be hit. Well, hopefully they're not going to be pulling each other's hair and hitting each other, right? Right. So you have to know your group, your client, their maturity level. But for extremely young kids, it would be for 6 tops. It also depends on if you have help. Now, if you have a teacher assistant and they're younger, then you can add a little bit more people to the fray because you have someone to help you. So it depends on the scenario. You have to make the call for yourself because it's also a business decision too. You may not want to run a session with just four students. It might not be worth your time, right? So you have to figure that out, or increase the cost. So and what I've learned is people will spend more money to get more intimate experience because normally they don't want to show their weaknesses in front of other people. So people will pay you more money to have one-on-one sessions or small group sessions. And you have to figure out how you're going to work that. Okay. But this is your basic lesson plan. Okay. And like I said, when you get settled, um, you're gonna write one, and you just
Yeah.
follow this template. Just follow this template. All right.
All right.
And keep in mind, we want to keep in mind that the first thing we have to do is set our objectives. Makes sense, obviously. You want to keep blooms in mind, depending on what that terminal objective is, right? A lot of in ESL, a lot of what we're going to be doing is going to be lower level stuff, right? We really don't want them diving deep in ESL. We really don't want them diving deep in analysis and we're probably we probably stop it at application.
Mhm.
But you may have a group of engineers doing advanced English, and you need them to do some evaluation and synthesis and analysis. It depends, right? It depends on who your target audience is. So make sure you keep blooms in mind as it relates to what your enabling objectives and your terminal objective. Context is important, especially for every learner, even C2s. Make sure you create a context, so the situation that they will understand. So even if there's C1s, and you're probably not going to hold classes with C1s, to be honest. You're probably
Yeah.
going to hold classes A1s and A2s and maybe B1s, right?
Mhm.
B2s if you want to improve their writing, right? But whatever the case may be, you want to definitely make sure you have the proper context, right? And that you're setting that context throughout your lesson, keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind that the context should be a situation that they understand, not that you understand. Situation that they understand. The communicative activity, again, this wraps everything up. For business purposes, you really do want this to be fun, especially if you're getting like some type of contract with like a school or business. You really want this to be fun because this is going to probably be the last thing they remember. Walking out smiling, oh man, that was pretty cool. So you really want this to be interactive and engaging, right? Because this is going to be that lasting memory, especially if you're dealing with adults, but even kids. But especially if you're dealing with adults, it's like let's say you get a contract for a business to teach them English. They're going to go back to the boss and like, oh, that was really cool, right? And then you get another contract. Right? If you look at this, we're trying to keep them on their feet as much as possible. All right. In the ESL classroom, we don't want them sitting a lot. We want them on their feet as much as we can possibly get them on their feet. So keep that in mind too. So when you're constructing your classroom or your learning space, just keep that in mind. How you arrange your desk or your chairs. Okay. They don't necessarily think about this. They don't necessarily need desk often. Right? Well, because this is more application. You want them to practice. You really don't want them sitting there taking notes, because they're taking notes, they're gonna miss something.
Right.
You really want them, especially if they're A1s, A2s. Right? You want them engaged, either actively observing or participating with you doing the micro teaching. So think about that as you build your classrooms out, your learning space. If you do have desks, because you may need desk or table, think about where you're going to put that desk or table, those desks or tables, and have a space where you can get them and do the double lines and the double circles. Right? Space is important. Space in a whiteboard, because you're always going to bring them to that whiteboard when you do the vocabulary expansion. When you're doing, and the vocabulary expansion is where you can point out different grammar points that you want to point out. And it's good to have them on their feet. Have them on their feet when you bring them to the board. All right. So they can be active. They're more likely to track with you.
Yeah, they're
All right.
also more likely to have fun. They learn more.
Yep.
More
Blood
interaction,
flowing,
stimulates some the
interactive.
creativity. Yeah.
Get them on their feet as much as you possibly can. But this is your basic lesson plan.
All right.
And that's basically what I wanted to cover today.
Okay.
But it's not probably, it's extremely important. Right? You can, this alone, you can sell this product to schools alone. Teach them this. You can sell them this, just teach them how to write a lesson plan. Most teachers don't know how to write a lesson plan.
I like what you said
Especially if,
about starting with what you want the student to do. I think that's a novel approach, actually. What you want the student to do, and when you say what you want the student to do, does it have to do with what you want the student, or when you say what the student does, meaning to say what they've learned in class to do? Yeah, is that what you're?
so what do you want the
your point?
students to do? So like, let's go back to the lesson. So let's
All
say,
right.
for instance, let's go to the control practice. We want the control practice. We want the initiate students' questions. All right.
Mhm.
Ask students questions. What do you do for exercise? Because this is control practice, because they're asking each other now, right? So what do you do for exercise? They were asking each other that. I run. Watch teacher model as they go through the different scenarios. Repeat silently. Responds to teachers' questions. So what do you want the students to do? All those enabling objectives. This is where those enabling objectives come through.
Okay.
Watch, bond,
All right.
repeat, initiate, ask, participate. Right. This is where all those that's where we see all of those enabling objectives. They come in with the student. Right.
Okay.
And there should be some type of order to it, because it's a sequence, because first they watch and observe, and then they maybe repeat silently, and then they respond, right? Because isn't it very important, if they're watching you do it, to teach a teacher, they need to observe, because soon as they might get called for the teacher student or the student teacher, right? So they need to observe.
Sorry. Yeah, they do need to observe here. And I was just wondering, as I'm looking at these timings, let's say, for example, your time runs out, you're in control practice. Okay, it's your first time with this lesson. Obviously, it took a while to put them in the lines, and the whiteboard, you didn't have the marker, you went and got it. Things happen. And let's say you ended you look at the time, it's already, the bell rings, it's controlled practice, you're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring them back, obviously there's some form of recap of what happened last time before you take off again from control practice, or do you have to do the whole lesson, or can you just go from control practice and move on?
No,
I know that there's that warmer where you sort of like to go over what they've already done, right? You can fit it back, you can fit it there.
That's what I would do. So if we stopped at how often, right? And then the bell rings.
Right.
Then I'm gonna start back. The warmer is going to be, what do you do for exercise?
Okay.
All right. And then I'm gonna use that to smoothly transition into the control practice again.
Okay.
And basically you're starting where you stopped, but you do have that warmer, so they can remember, oh, what do you do for, I remember I run. Right. And that's the start point, and then you can smoothly continue on to that lesson, with that lesson again.
And that also is putting that class at ease and
yeah.
And doing.
Oh yeah, we did this. Yeah, we did this yesterday. Or we did this Tuesday. Yeah, I remember I run. And then now the engine starts moving again.
All right.
And you don't have to say, remember what we did on Tuesday. No, don't say that. Just use that, use the previous dialogue. That's your warmer because they're familiar with it already. So it's easy. Remember, warmer's easy, easy, easy. And then just continue the lesson again. So start with the how often, so go for what do you do for exercise, warmer, and then control practice. Well, the next question would be how often. Okay. Where? Then your vocabulary expansion. Okay.
Okay.
The good thing about it is, learners to track with you. They know what's going on. And so if you create, the great thing about following this paradigm is after a couple weeks with you, a couple days with you, they get what you're doing. So they see the structure. So now they have a certain expectation, right? Oh, I know he's going to do this next. And that's what you want. You really want to be predictable, especially in an ESL setting, because it reduces their anxiety. Remember Prashan's effective filter. You're reducing that anxiety. So, because you're gonna have students just gonna sit there and be like, hope he doesn't call on me, I hope he doesn't call on me, I hope he doesn't call on me, I hope he doesn't call on me, right? Because they know you're gonna do the micro teaching. I hope he doesn't call on me, I hope he doesn't call on me. So if it's what you're doing is predictable, then it's all right. If he calls on me, I know how to respond. Because I know exactly what to say and what to do. I'm okay. I'm all right. But if you always switching things around, then you're increasing that anxiety. They're like, oh, what I need to do? What I need. I mean, we see it all the time, right? In class when we lecture and then we call on a student, and he goes, and he knows the answer, but that anxiety goes, oh no. Yeah, I just said it, man. I literally just said it. Right? Because they weren't expecting being called on. They put on a hot seat. We call it the hot seat, right? But if the students if they go into the lesson knowing that it's micro time, it's micro teaching time. All right, and then they're ready because they're expecting it to come. So that's why this paradigm is so important, because the students go into the classroom with reduced anxiety and comfortable with you because they know exactly what they expect out of the class. That doesn't mean that the class is boring. It just means they know the pattern. Now, all the things that you do can be new, can be interesting, but they know that you're going to micro teach. They know that control practice is going to come up. You're going to ask them to get up. They know that vocabulary expansion. They know that you're going to do a listening prompt or a reading prompt, or, oh, I wonder if we're going to do listening today. I wonder if we're going to do reading today. I wonder if it's going to be a speaking activity today. Yeah, especially if they're with you for a while. So this allows teachers to be predictable as far as the sequence of the lesson is concerned. The content, we have content, process, and product, right? The content can be different, can be unpredictable, but the sequence is very predictable. The process is predictable, right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. I think we stopped right on. We measured this one perfect. Speaking of timing, because that's what I have for today.
Okay. All right.
Any questions?
No, I'm good.
So yeah, I'm not gonna put you on a hot seat today because you already told me you didn't read the deal.
Exactly why I told you that.
Yep. See, because your anxiety level was like, oh man, I know that, because you knew it was coming, right? So
actually, I was but I mean, I definitely I was gonna read, but interestingly, what you just said about what I did was I did an experiment, okay, from this class, and so I told you I had some therapy students. I'm working on them on amputee rehabilitation, which is quite a complicated case because it's so narrow. what's the cases themselves, actually it's so morbid and mortal that it's become a profession, of course, in so many ways. And in our field, in physiotherapy, it's just like a chapter in a book usually. So I did this training session for them that's over a few days, and I brought somebody in, a specialist, to work with them also. And I remember what you said about the filter and reducing the anxiety and all that. And so I made this workbook, and I put all the answers in it, actually, aside from the pretest. But most of what I'm discussing and a lot of it is in there. And I would put it up in the board, or I would be discussing something in their book. And of course, like the first day, it wasn't like that. The first day I was trying to understand their clinical reasoning, which lets me throw out these fantastic ideas and see how they react to them. But then later on during the sessions, I would be talking about something that I know they've studied, but by now, they're graduates. They've been graduates for 5 years. They've totally forgotten it. And so the answers are right there. And of course, those who don't speak are speaking. That's what I noticed. People who normally don't contribute to the discussion, or who weren't in the discussion, now they're in the discussion. I also found that they didn't have to worry about really while they were paying attention, sometimes they miss things, or they want to take notes on something, and they're so worried about not catching up with you, or that they sort of have to skip it. But I felt that they had more time to work on their own thing, that they needed. And so so I appreciated that. And especially when it's really clear, and when I stop, I talk about the things that are very clear. I try not to go into the details. And really, many times I would just tell them, well, hey, between the two of us, even I don't know the answer to that question. It's open. What do you think? And I would sort of like let them share their experience, and actually give it more weight than maybe I would in the past. And I found that they're more responsive to that. So I've been, I've benefited from that part, even outside of teaching languages. I see it cuts across all fields.
Most of what we're doing can be used and adapted for all situations, not just language learning.
Right.
I mean, it just works in many situations. Even this lesson basic lesson plan, you can you got to tweak it a little bit,
right?
But it can be used then as a format for any type of presentation or instruction.
Wonderful.
So I'll probably hear from you in a couple of days.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let you know.
Safe travels.
Thanks. Definitely.
Yeah. If you have any issues, just message me. I can call the ambassador. Maybe he can have somebody maybe help you.
Great. That would be great. Yeah.
And
hopefully, I'm not expecting that. I'm under the care of the organization, so hopefully, they'll take care of me. But if there is anything, you never know what happens in this world. But I'll reach out to you. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
I'll send you some photos from there, and maybe that'll convince you to.
Oh, I want to go. I want to go. I'll get there.
Oh yeah, you have to. I've never been actually I never traveled in Africa that much. Maybe I traveled more in the Middle East and Asia. I saw the States, of course, but I've never traveled in Africa. And I was so lucky that out of all of the countries that I got to visit first aside from Sudan, was Kenya. And I remember getting off the plane there. Actually, even from the air, when I looked at it, it was so green and it was so cloudy. And when I got out, it was cold. It was like 22 degrees Celsius or 20, it was chilly. And I just noticed that it's so organized. And I'll tell you something. I mean, honestly, people there, they don't smoke, for example. It's not that, it's not a matter of, they just don't when you, have you noticed that about, you never noticed. They just don't.
That's a good point. I've never seen a Kenyan smoke.
I'll tell you, if somebody tries to light up a cigarette on the street, they'll always be right next to the wall on the corner there. We're so far away, and what I mean by that is it's organized in that way. It's a non-smoking country, and people just naturally don't smoke. Ethiopians don't smoke. Ethiopia is one of those places where you'll not see a belly. Okay, people don't have body fat. They're really trimmed well, and they
Absolutely.
don't. And it keeps the country clean and in one way or another. But it's that order that they have. And it's just for me coming from Sudan, where people smoke a lot, and from and hanging out in Arabia and with the Egyptians, people smoke all the time. I just thought to myself, there's something different here. It would be nice to explore it and to understand more about it. So I just started with that small thing. Where can I smoke in the airport? And then as I started to just to experiment, to explore, I another thing, in the morning people walk a lot. When you're on the
Mhm.
road, you look to the right, to the left of the street, people are walking and walking and walking. Again, it's that culture. They have a culture of walking. It's not that there's no transportation or no Ubers. No, it's just people like to walk. And I always think to myself, wow, it's such a healthy habit. I hope
Mhm.
I hope they don't lose it with what's going on with driverless cars and things like that. People coming up with those ideas. But yeah, so it's just wonderful. It's wonderful.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful time. And we'll hear from you shortly.
All right.